lamps, I would better like to do shots at a party. Yes, so am I. Shorty, we could do it all night. Show me what you got, and after I would like to do.
După ce m-am omorât, ia că și tu mi-ai cerut. Cu după instantaneu, cheșau, racheșau, nu se oprește. Pam pam bam, pam pam bam 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 bam. Dă-ne pe portmoneu, scrie mare, dar leveu. Cheșau, racheșau, nu se oprește.
Dragostea mea, te căutam când te aveam deja și mi-ai rupt în două inima. Jumătate de ea, da, jumătate de vai de ea. Cât mă poți iubi, mereu mă ierți oricât de mult aș greși. Numai tu poți reuși să mă faci dragostea să mai pot simți. Seară de seară nu o somn.
Tu tu ru tu 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 tu. Hello, Tarkov? Băga-mi și până la morții tăi. 6% băga-mi și până la Dumnezeu mătii de joc. Să-mi bag. Și morților mătii de joc. Stupid. Du-te în pula mea. Ți-ai morți în pulă de joc. Bă, coi, dar ce e așa de mult să se încarce mâncaici gura lui de joc? What the fuck, coi? Bă, ce trecu mă joc aici, mâncați așa? Te-ți nebun? Holy fuck. Bă, te-ți nebun? Du-te morții, mătii. Ia uite-l coaie cât ia.
Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
Ce să știu
cât te iubesc eu.
Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
Ce să știu
Că dorul tău e în pieptul meu. Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
zi ce să știu
Cât te iubesc eu. Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
zi ce să știu
Că dorul tău e în pieptul meu. Am un foc în inimioară, privirea ta mă omoară. Nu pleci deloc din mintea mea, aș face orice să te pot vedea. Și când adorm te visez, ia suflet, simt un dor amar. Mi-e dor de tine zi de zi, doar tu mă poți liniști.
Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
Ce să știu
cât te iubesc eu.
Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
Ce să știu
Că dorul tău e în pieptul meu. Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
zi ce să știu
Că
pentru mine.
Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
Ce să știu?
cât te iubesc eu.
Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
Ce să știu?
că dorul tău e în pieptul meu.
Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
Zice să știu
cât te iubesc eu. Tu știi, mă, tu știi, mă, tu știi
Zice să știu
că dorul tău e în pieptul meu.
Ce-ți mai place să te joci și mână ei pe toți. Hai să o dăm la pace, tot pierde câteva nopți. Nu mai e loc să pun stop, am găsit la tine tot. Ce-ți place mă provoci, tanto sub piele să mă poți. Ia la, ce să fac inima vrea. Ia la, nu poate fără ta. Ia le, hai zi-mi ce vrei. Dar noaptea să mă iei, facem să sară scântei. Credem că nu mai e niciuna. Zilele ai venit și soarele întâlnește luna. A mea, să fii lumea mea, te-aș vrea. Toată noaptea nu mă satur, face vrăși privirea ta. Cred că e manifestare, n-ai venit și mi se pare că tu ai tot ce-mi doream. Jur că te vreau mai tare. Hai vino că am chef mare, să facem particulare. Dai lumea peste cap, e jale.
La 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 la.
Ce să fac inima vrea. Nu poate fără ta. Ia le, hai zi-mi ce vrei. Dar noaptea să mă iei, facem să sară scântei. Ce să fac inima vrea. Nu poate fără ta. Ia le, hai zi-mi ce vrei. Dar noaptea să mă iei, facem să sară scântei. Facem să sară scântei. Seara de seară nu o somn. E strict cluburi, disco, de să caut dragostea. Dar dragostea mea de unde am plecat, cred că mă întorc. Seara de seară nu o somn. Am agățat-o de una să uit dragostea. Dar dragostea mea de unde am plecat, cred că mă întorc la ea. Dragostea mea, te căutam când te aveam deja. Și mi-ai rupt în două inima. Jumătate de ea, da, jumătate de vai de ea. Cât mă poți iubi, mereu mă ierți oricât de mult aș greși. Numai tu poți reuși să mă faci dragostea, să o mai poți simți. Seara de seară nu o somn. E strict cluburi, disco, de să caut dragostea. Dar dragostea mea de unde am plecat, cred că mă întorc. Seara de seară nu o somn. mă întorc seara de seară, nu o somn. Am agățat-o de una să uit dragostea, dar dragostea mea de unde a plecat, cred că mă întorc la ea. Așa-mi trebuie dacă stau după o nebună. Are numai chef de ceartă de o săptămână. Eu nu pot să-mi dau seama ce o fi în capul ei. Asta are într-o secundă 50.000 de idei. E bună, e bună, e bună, dar nebună. Chiar te m-aș muta pe lună, mă cer cumva și mă sună. Să vină toți lăutarii să-mi cânte de foc.
Bă, ia stai mă un pic. Ce mă stopul ăsta? Vreau să mă rotărei. Dai back-ul ăsta. Băgăm-i și până la morții, mătii. De când până când e atât de mult?
Pe cine să mai dau vina că tu nu vrei să mă mai iei, vrei să o închei. Inima plânge de tine ca de obicei, că doar tu ești liniștea ei.
Mă gândi și nu știu ce.
Floarea mea de mălin, hai te rog să fim trei, fără niciun, fără femei. Să vină toți lăutarii să-mi cânte de foc. Nu mai pun suflet în relații, că nu am noroc.
Că vreau să mă răcoresc.
Știi că viața e o fugă constantă printre iluzii și vicii, te zbați să ieși la suprafață. Când cerul mă apasă, mă duc între cu rădăcinile-mi redau puterea. O singură șansă, destinul meu crud, artiștii acceptă durerea. Am sabia gata, katana ronin, nu ascult de nimeni, mereu fug de timp. Cristale combin pentru viață și mana am maxim de skill. Flow-ul mi-e arma de când mi-am dat seama că viața e un joc. Am parcurs toată harta prin apă și foc. Nu trebuie noroc, în final se plătește ambiție și muncă până îmi reușește. În grădina cu flori am plantat niște string ca să nu uit ce înseamnă echilibru. Iubire și ură, onoare, rușini, încredere, frică, căldură și frig. Am 1000 de fețe, nu știi ce să crezi, că pe piese mă transform într-una. Tu trebuie să înțelegi că-s făcut să creezi, îți promit că nu minte niciuna. S mereu agitat că e cronic.
tot ce mai Am fost acolo, toate știi ca și final. Mersi. Am fost acolo, toate știi ca și final. La metru.
Vă salutăm pe toți prietenii noștri, Nițoiu doar ce a făcut un accident și acum îl las pe el să zică mai departe.
Dacă îmi cer scuze lui socrul meu, lui soacra mea, îmi cer scuze dacă merg la pușcărie sau nu, îmi cer scuze, s-a luat eu. Aia e.
Își iubește familia,
Iubesc familia
își iubește nevasta,
și nevasta și familia, iubesc. Am făcut un accident și am avut presă la ora, un bolid, o trotire de bolid.
vă salutăm pe toți prietenii noștri, Nițoiu doar ce a făcut un accident și acum îl las pe el să zică mai departe.
Fost acolo, toate știi ca și final.
Okay, I'll just ask you some questions and I'll let you talk basically like I'm not here. And you can look right into the lens of the camera too, basically like I'm an omnipresent observer. So first, I'll just have you introduce yourself, and then, yeah, we can get right into it.
Okay, welcome. My name is Bob Cram. I live here in Brentwood, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Pittsburgh. I'm the author of the book, The Demon of Brownsville Road, and it's about circumstances that took place in this house 15, 20 years ago or so. And I'm here to answer your questions. So fire away.
Why don't we first just start out with the history of the property and kind of why
Sure.
beforehand it may have started?
Well, I did a lot of research on the background and the history of this house. I'm a former military intelligence officer and know how to gather facts and put them together to paint a picture, so to speak. And we were very interested in why this particular house was possessed by a demonic entity. And again, not just haunted. Haunted houses are relatively common, but what we experienced here was rare. At least rare from the standpoint of the entity that was here was a very powerful demonic force. It took great time and effort to exorcise it from the house. So I was interested into what took place here even before this house was built, and I discovered through various means that in 1792, not long after the Revolutionary War concluded, there was a very serious and great war with the Native Americans in western Pennsylvania and Ohio with the new American government. George Washington was president. After the Revolution, this land, which had heretofore been restricted by the British to settlement west of the Allegheny Mountains, to keep peace with the Native Americans, was opened up by the new American government for settlement. And people flooded into this area, literally. The Native American tribes, the Iroquois Nation, who claimed that they were not party to the Treaty of Paris, and even though the British ceded this land to the United States, they saw it as their country, and they weren't welcome to it being
Rady, băga-mi și pula morții, mătii. Și în familia ta de joc.
Very vicious. One of the greatest defeats of the American Army took place, St. Clair's defeat in Ohio, and the Native Americans pushed the frontier back to what is now Pittsburgh, the Monongahela and the Ohio River. And during that war, there apparently was a settlement right here, somewhere right where the house now stands. A mother and her 3 daughters were killed in a terror raid, which was unlike Native American tradition. They didn't generally kill women and children, but in this case, it was a war of terror to send a message: if you bring your family here, you're going to die, and your family as well. So we were only 6 miles from Fort Pitt, which had been reactivated and re-garrisoned, and it was surprising that an attack of this nature took place so close to the fort, but it did. The 4 bodies are buried in what is now the front yard of this house, and the father, who was not present when it took place, came home to find his slain family. His name was Deliverance Brown, buried his family in the front yard. And what we feel is that, the Native Americans used to pray to their spirits for courage and victory in their attacks and their wars. And we feel whatever spirit that was associated with that violent, vicious raid and the murder of these children and their mother attached itself to the land, and that it was an evil entity and came to inhabit the house after it was built, this house, and that the pattern of hurting and killing children continued as in the 1920s, it was used by a pediatrician as an illegal abortion clinic. And many abortions were performed in one of the bedrooms upstairs. So that's what we discovered, and what I feel was the genesis for the evil in the house.
Take me to the very first time that you came to the house. Like, what did it feel like right when you arrived, when you first purchased the property? What was it like?
Well, I grew up in this neighborhood, in this community, and from my earliest memories, say from, as a 7 years old, when I could, walk the streets by myself, and I had friends who lived right near the house, and I used to walk by this house, and it always captivated me. All through my childhood and teen years, I could never pass this house without having an attraction to it. It always felt to be drawing me in. I would stand out on the sidewalk and just look at it. And I always wanted to come inside and look at the house. And I wanted to know about the people who lived here and so on. Years later, I graduated from Duquesne University and went on to become a regular Army officer. And I was in the Army not quite 10 years. Was married, had 4 children, and we decided it was time to leave the military, and we moved back here to Pittsburgh. I initially had a job in New Jersey with AT&T, and I was fortunate to be able to get a job in Pittsburgh, and I transferred here, so we came here in 1988. New family, very excited to come home. We're particularly planning on living in this community. We were looking to move to one of the newer developments further out, but my mother told me that the week we were moving back, interestingly enough, that this house was going to be put on the market for sale. So at that point in time, I basically knew what house we were going to buy. We came here to see the house. So from the first time coming in to look at it, we had 2 of our children with us, our 4-year-old daughter, Jessica, and our 3-year-old son at the time, Bobby. And we were walking through the house. The owners were showing it to us. It wasn't on the market yet, so there was no realtor involved. And we were in the basement looking at the furnace, and my wife noticed that our son Bobby wasn't with us. And this being a large house, they headed upstairs to find where this 3-year-old boy was, and found him halfway up to the 2nd floor on this large staircase. It has a landing halfway up, and he was trembling and gasping for air, like he had seen a ghost. And the woman of the house, the lady who owned it, rushed past my wife and embraced my son and says, "Honey, what's wrong? Did you see something?" My wife thought that was an interesting, odd question to ask him as to what would he have seen to elicit such a reaction. As time went on, when we bought it, I would come to know why. And it was interesting when I made my offer, which was, as I recall, about $20,000 less than what they were asking for the house. They immediately took my first offer, which surprised me. They were anxious to leave. They wanted to get out, and I know why, because the house was uncomfortable for them.
So what was the first experience that you guys had that was striking?
Paranormal, yeah.
Yeah.
So the first incident that really confirmed to my wife and I that there was something besides us in this house, that there was a spirit in the house. And again, before this, I had no interest in ghosts. I had never had any experience. This was long before the paranormal craze. I'd seen the movie, seen movies about haunted houses and The Exorcist and so on, but I had no particular interest in it. I had never had a paranormal experience. My wife had not either. The first event that did confirm to us that there was something else in the house was an incident that took place in a closet, a large walk-in closet that's under the staircase that goes to the 2nd floor. the staircase goes up to a landing and then reverses back up. So there's this large open area under the staircase. I noticed that inside the closet, because it's large, there's a light, an old-fashioned Victorian light with a brass pull chain, and you simply open the door and reach in where the light is and pull its chain, turn on the light, get your coat or whatever you're looking for. And I noticed after a week or so being in the house, a few weeks, that when I would go into the closet to get my overcoat to go to work in the morning, that this chain, this hanging chain on the light, would be meticulously wrapped around the top of the light, or even around the little screws that held the shade, the crystal shade to the light. So you would go to pull on the chain and it would pull because it was either wrapped around the top of the light or these little screws. So I obviously thought that my wife was going in and pulling the chain and letting it fly, and it would wrap itself around. So I asked her not to do that, and it was aggravating to have to feel in there, because you can't generally see it when you open the door. You have to feel for where the light is, and she responded that she wasn't pulling on the light hard, wasn't letting the chain fly, and she didn't know what I was talking about. So one morning we opened the closet, I unwrapped the chain, turned on the light, closed the door, turned out the light, and we agreed don't go in the closet for the rest of the day. Now, our children were 4 and below, so this light is 6 feet off the floor, so they obviously weren't doing it. And when I came home that night, I went to the closet, closed the door, reached for the light, the chain was wrapped around the light again. So with that absolutely confirmed to us that something was doing it. We didn't do it, and there's no way that chain would mysteriously float and wrap itself around it. So that began. I eventually had to take a rock and tie it to the chain, tie it to a coat hook to keep it in place. That began a whole series of seemingly innocuous, not threatening type things that would happen in the house in the coming years, where once you get past it, you're not really scared, but it's somewhat unsettling. Furniture would be moved, you'd come down in the morning, the lights would be all on, radios would be playing. I had a radio in the basement in my workshop. I'd invariably go down all the time, and the radio would be on and the light would be on. So things like that, again, not really threatening, but nonetheless unnatural.
And when did it start to become something more than just
interesting or
playful?
Yeah, playful. Well, this thing had evil intent, obviously, and it began and eventually it worked on us, worked on our minds, scared the children, began to affect them. After 6 years or so in the house, 6 or 7 years, my wife had what amounted to a full-blown mental breakdown, had to be hospitalized. 2 of my children eventually had to be hospitalized as well for psychiatric treatment. We're very dysfunctional. At the time, I had no idea the 2 were related, that this spiritual presence that didn't seem to be threatening was in fact working on us as well. And it progressively got worse, and then finally, after we had been in the house for over a decade, all hell broke loose, so to speak. It's all detailed in my book, how it moved along, but it became, at that point, very open, in your face, so to speak. I mean, it became very dangerous, and that's when I sought help. But we lived with it in the house for a number of years. I didn't realize or correlate what it was doing to us and our mental state with the benign spirit, which we thought it was at the time.
So what started to happen that was beyond the happy?
Yes, I understand. Well, a whole series of events took place with the family, with one of my sons, and it became very chaotic. And then when the paranormal, I guess the one event that happened that really scared me, and I realized that this thing was dangerous, that it wanted to hurt us. My oldest son Bobby was in his bedroom one day after school, and he was a teenager then. I guess he was about 17 years old. And he heard a loud, like a pop, not like a gunshot or an explosion, kind of almost like a light bulb breaking. That real loud pop in the corner of his room. And he heard something whisk past his head and hit the wall. And what it was, and he went over to find that a music disc, a CD, some way mysteriously, it was like it was shot out of a gun, in the corner of his room, right past his head, hit the plaster wall, again, plaster about an inch thick plaster, and it hit that wall with such velocity that it shattered like a plate thrown against concrete. And if you think of a music disc, I mean, they're pretty durable. I mean, even to break one in half would take some effort. And if I took a music disc and threw it against the wall, it may chip it or crack it. But this thing came by his head with such velocity, I could hold what was left of it in my hands. It was just shards of plastic. Had that hit him, it probably would have killed him. That's when I realized that this thing was dangerous, and it became even more apparent in the things that it would do. It would take all the pictures in the house and turn them sideways on the wall. It would move furniture. It just did a whole series of things to let us know it was there, which progressively got more and more daily, on a daily event, or a daily basis, I should say, the events took place, especially after we began battling it with the Catholic priests.
And how did the priests become involved?
Well, at the time when this stuff started to happen, and again, it was before, the whole paranormal craze, and every town and city now has a whole host of paranormal investigators and paranormal teams, which I must make a comment to them. To me, that's a very dangerous hobby to have. You can go out and investigate ghosts and so on, but you come across one of these evil entities, these evil spirits, they can hurt you, and they can hurt you severely. To me, it's kind of like having a hobby where I defuse bombs. Not something that you should take lightly or even be involved in. I have a lot of experience in this, obviously. I know what works, I know what doesn't work. I was in the midst of battling one of these spirits. People come to me all the time, and I'll refer them to other. I don't want to be involved with this. I don't want to touch it. It's dangerous. It's dangerous work. So, how did they become involved? What do you do? It's the famous who you're going to call. From Ghostbusters. I was not Catholic at the time. Evangelical Christian. Went to the pastor of my church. I knew that this was not normal. It was evil. I felt I needed religious help. He wanted nothing to do with it. He thought I was a little kooky. I told him what was happening. It was outside of his realm, outside of his comfort zone. But I did know from just movies like The Exorcist that the Catholic Church claims to have a handle on this type of situation. I was a former politician, high-level politician in Pittsburgh. I was friends with the who was mayor of Pittsburgh at the time, good friends, and I had told him what was taking place, and he went and visited the bishop of Pittsburgh, Donald Worrell, went on to become a cardinal of the church, Archbishop of Washington, D.C. And eventually he assigned a priest. That eventually included a number of priests, a team of priests who would work with us for the next 2 years. They did bring an exorcist in from the Archdiocese of New York to perform an exorcism. Father James LeVar, he had done a famous TV exorcism with Geraldo Rivera years ago. That's how the church got involved. But I might say that they were befuddled to an extent how their procedures and what they do. For about a year, it wasn't working. It wasn't working. This thing was so powerful that it was holding on and holding its own. It became, after a period of time, a test of just endurance. And the battle fell to me, my wife and I, our family, because it had to be waged on a daily basis, and it just took a long time before the final scene, the final exorcism.
So what were, I guess, the two most frightening things that happened to your family, would you say, that kind of were the impetus to calling the priests? When was it too dangerous?
Well, as I had said, that incident with the music CD, to me, was scary. Now, things got a lot worse in the house, especially during the first year. Again, this began in late 2003 and did not end until early 2006. So it was over 2 years. After the battle took place for the first year, and I realized things weren't getting any better, it was getting worse in the house, we were ready to just give up and move out. What took place at that point, and I feel it was the spirit somewhat claiming victory, because it knew it had worn us down, kind of like a fighter against the ropes who's ready to just quit. It began to throw a blood-like substance onto the walls. When I say throw, you hear of bleeding walls. Apparently this happens in these situations with blood on the walls. The walls don't secrete or exude. In our case, it was very similar to, for those that are familiar with the Catholic practice of blessing a room or a house with holy water, they or people, so to speak, they take this vessel and it's in a vase and they throw the holy water and droplets of it go on the walls and whatever you're blessing. If you can imagine doing that, not with holy water, but with a pitcher full of blood. So you have these large droplets of this blood-like substance and we have almost 10-foot ceilings in this house, so the walls are high, and it was all the way at the top. And it began on the 3rd floor and eventually made its way throughout the house. Every day or so, we would find it in different rooms of the house. And that was very unsettling, so to speak. And right away, people said, well, what was it? Was it blood? It wasn't blood. I had it tested by various labs. They never were able to determine that it was, it wasn't blood, even though they did find skin cells in it. It was a mixture, a concoction of different chemicals that shouldn't have been together. They didn't know what it was, but it looked like blood. It would appear on the floors, on the hardwood floors, in puddles in different places. There was also some clear liquid that would appear on the floors. It smelled. And again, this stuff, it didn't happen once, it didn't happen twice. It was almost a daily occurrence. We lived with this and things like that. I can remember one instance which was very unsettling. I woke up in the middle of the night and I was completely turned around in bed, meaning that went to bed, my wife was in bed next to me. I woke up and I was under the blankets, under the covers, my feet were on my pillow and my head was at the base of the bed. Now I don't have a habit of getting up in the middle of the night, get back in bed like that. I had not been out of bed, but I was some way turned around in bed. And things like that. It just crazy, but we dealt with it.
So did you ever find anything interesting out about the house, or maybe anything inside of the house while all this was happening?
Yeah, the Catholic Church had us contact, again, this is before the paranormal craze, and there was a group of students at Penn State University that had paranormal research. They were the first. They went on to have their own television show, matter of fact, called Paranormal State. Ryan Buell, who went on, I believe, to have his own personal issues, which I think he attributes to his work here in this house. But we contacted them. The church wanted to have an outside investigative team verify that there was unnatural things happening in this house. People that weren't associated with religion, that were somewhat scientific, and they were. First they came 10 different people, students with, everything, EVP meters and infrared cameras, and they wired the whole house up and recorded things, and it was quite impressive. They came to the house twice. They had talked to some type of medium, some type of spiritual person who apparently, as I understand it, was going to come with them, but then told them that she was from Gettysburg, and her name was Julie, I believe, and she said, guys, I'm not going to that house, and I recommend you stay away from it as well. So she didn't come, but she did tell them that there is a void, a space in the center of the house. That's where this thing is its lair, so to speak, and you need to get into that space. So the first thing they asked me when they came, if in fact a space existed, and I said yes. In fact, it was the area in the center of the house underneath the grand staircase. So I went into that closet that I referred to earlier with the light and the chain, cut through the wall. Now mind you, the house at the time was almost 100 years old. It was built in 1909, and this was 2005. So we cut through the plaster wall. This area under the steps had been sealed off for almost 100 years since the house was built, and they found a whole host of items under the steps that were interesting, and one of which should not have been there. They found some of my son's Lego toys in this area, completely, sealed off, no way into it. Lego toys. They found a large piece of amber, it was several inches large or long. Amber had traditionally been used throughout, I guess, the Middle Ages as to ward off evil. Why that was in there. They also found an interesting picture that apparently had been drawn by the original owner of the house. And it was a nice drawing. He was an artist. What appeared to be his wife and his mother-in-law in the backyard looking at a sunset. And on the reverse of that drawing were these very bizarre, evil-looking pictures that one of the priests later told us was a curse that was put on the family, and it was put on this drawing, crumbled up and thrown under the steps. I go into much greater detail in the book, but we found things. We found a bird skeleton in there. We found some playing cards that may have had some significance. And after we broke into that area, again, which this mystical woman had told us was the spirit's lair, all hell really broke loose in the house at that point. And it became a battle royale, so to speak. That's a long answer to your question.
That was perfect. What was the climax of the story?
Okay.
How did it kind of come full circle?
Well, after the Father Labar came and was here for several hours performing this exorcism, this ritual, from that point forward, the house was calm, but I still saw the thing, and it would appear in different shapes and forms, and It would let you know it was there. It had this stench. I don't even say foul smell. It was a stench that it would give off when it was in the room with you. Kind of like a burning sulfur, burning rubber type of smell that was very pungent. And I saw a again, it would appear as a black shadow, a black cloud. Sometimes it would take on a bodily form that would be seen. I never saw it in the bodily form, but my children and some of their friends saw it. It was always like the man in black, so to speak, almost like the Grim Reaper with a long black cape on. So I knew it was in the basement still. So we had one of the primary priests of the team, and I said we would have mass almost weekly in the house. I said we have to concentrate in the basement, and there was a mass that was celebrated, said in the basement with the family present. Various incidents took place during the mass that let us know that the spirit was present. It liked to do that during mass. It wanted to let you know that it was there, and you'd either smell its stench, or it would make noises. In this case, it knocked on the wall. After that, some things took place that told us where it was. We kind of cornered it in a room that had once been used to store coal in, and we confronted it, said prayers, and it was finally expunged from the house. Now, I always thought that maybe there would be some great fanfare when it left, like there would be a thunderbolt or something, but it was more like a fire that eventually just burned itself out, and it just petered away and left. And I knew at that point in time, a peace came over me, a peace came over the house, that it was gone, that it was over. We had mass so many times and gone through so many ups and downs and feeling that we were making progress, but at that point in time, I knew it was done. Now, for a number of months after that, I had kind of a post-traumatic stress syndrome, where I was always on edge about, was it still, coming back or so on. It was gone. It's been gone. That was the climax of the story. So after I went through this several year process, again, initially, when it began, my friend the mayor said, you need to keep notes. I thought it would be like, calling the exterminator, the Ghostbusters, who would come and do whatever they did, maybe once, maybe twice, and it would be over. So he said, you need to keep notes of what's happening, what's going on. So I did begin to keep a daily diary. Little did I know at the end I'd have 350 pages of detailed notes as to what took place during the whole process. And he said, you gotta write, you gotta tell the story, man. I'm telling you, this happened. It is true. No matter, people read my book, and I read reviews on Amazon, and most of them are very good. People impressed by it, but a lot of people get very angry when they read the book, because I feel it challenges what they believe, or maybe what they don't believe in. And maybe they don't believe in God. They don't believe in the hereafter, or spirits, or good or evil. And my message is, you can believe whatever you want. You can be sincere about whatever you want. But I'm telling you that this happened. And it wasn't aliens. It wasn't our imagination. This was good and evil. This was I don't say that the devil itself was here, but this was evil. Good and evil, God, angels, it's all true. It's all true. And that's the message. And when I understand and
The Satanic Ritual Site and Creepy Doll.
I've found vehicles that were used in crimes dumped out there. I've found dogs from dog fights that were dumped out there.
nation, this
Ia să vedem ce mai găsim pe aici.
In this clip, Chad Wright tells his story of encountering a demon. Check it out.
I get back in the platoon, get ready, deploy again. I'm keeping my wickedness under control, outwardly, but it's still all there, man. Well, we go up to Tunisia, North Africa, and Arabs attacked the embassy up there. When all that Benghazi and that stuff went down, that happened all over North Africa.
Really quick, September 11th, 2012, Islamic militants attacked the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, killing Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens and 3 other Americans. The attack, amid political unrest, sparked controversy over U.S. security measures and response. Investigations followed, with debates over accountability and the Obama administration's handling of the crisis.
So we went up there, resecured the embassy. We came back. We left there and came back to Germany to rejock our equipment because that mission was over in Tunisia. Came back to Germany to rejock, and then we were going out to Nigeria. And while we were in Germany, the only way for me to tell you this in just simple terms is we were staying in a barracks that was inhabited by some sort of demon. And that was the genesis of my conversion. Of me being made aware that, okay.
So when you say it's inhabited by a demon, like in what way?
So I was in there with a couple of other guys. I wish I would have wrote all this down. I was laying in bed one night in this place. There was nobody else in this building. It was just me and there were me and a guy in one room and 2 other guys in the room across the hall there. Okay. Well, I'm laying in bed. And all of a sudden, I'm jolted awake by something that hits my door. And I lay in bed for maybe 30 seconds, and while I'm laying there listening, I can hear some strange voices echoing up and down the hall of this building that we're in. And so immediately I get up, open the door, walk out. Nobody's out there. Walk around. Nobody's in the building. Go in my buddy's room beside me. They're both passed out. But it scared me, dude. I was like, what on earth is this?
Not gonna lie, if this was me, I would have shit my pants. Going to investigate noises is not something I'd be willing to do. I guess that's the reason why I'm a beta male.
It scared me. And these things would, like the oven would be turned on, like these bumps and noises. But more than all of that, there became this oppressive feeling of like evil in this place. And the guys that I was with in there, they started getting freaked out about it too. We called our senior chief, who had been staying there before us. It was just like an old empty place that guys would come and stay in for a few nights before they left out. We called our senior chief. We're like, hey man, did you have any strange experiences in this place? He was like, oh yeah. Yeah, there's something in there.
Chad is likely referring to the Kahn barracks in Schweinfurt, Germany, a former Nazi hospital. It is haunted by ghostly apparitions. American soldiers reported seeing a Nazi soldier and a blood-covered nurse standing over their beds in a room above a former drainage area, with 2 separate incidents describing identical chilling visions. The U.S. Army was stationed there until its closure in September 2014.
And But like I remember walking into this place and there was a stairwell. I would walk up the first flight of stairs and then there would be a second flight that cut back and there was like a landing up there because we were staying on the second deck. And like I would, as a hunter, like how you have that sense when something is like staring at you, like I would feel this thing staring at me up there on that landing, and I would fully expect to turn around and see some sort of something up there. And I never saw it in physical form. We started doing this research online about, looking at these forums and stuff about this place that we were, in, and finding all kinds of other stuff about it. I'm like, well, whatever is going on here, I can't sleep at night. Like, I don't want to be in that place. Because it's literally scaring me that bad. And the sanity check was the dudes I was with were getting freaked out too. And like I wish I would have talked to them and written down the things that they were specifically experiencing.
Do you remember any of them?
So that it's been so long ago, man. Like the experience that I had was so powerful. Like that just is the one thing that sticks in my mind. But I remember the 2 guys across the hallway one of them had to leave. They were going out to a different site, and that dude, the other dude, was left in that room by himself. He moved across the hallway to stay in the room that me and my guy were with, because he didn't want to stay in that room by himself.
It kind of goes to show, even the hardest men on earth, Navy SEALs, can turn into scared kids in the face of ghosts and demons.
Jesus.
And so I called my little brother, because I knew my little brother was a Christian. And I said, well, here's one of these Christians. They'll have maybe a little bit of insight on this spiritual stuff that might be going on here. He said, well, man, I ain't never ran into nothing like